This is me about to fight the best player in this team tournament as my very first game. If I lose this game, I probably won't get to play again. To understand how I got here, we have to go back a bit. This is UUPL, the premier UU team tournament on Smogon. This is a tournament in which the best UU players in the world play against each other. For people not as familiar with Smogon, a team tournament is basically a tournament in which managers get picked to buy players in an auction. Over the course of 7 weeks, each team will be paired against one another, and the best teams go to playoffs where the winner is crowned. I've never been drafted to a UUPL. I don't even really play the tier. On Smogon, I'm only really known as a PU player, and mainly a DPP one at that. A couple months before UUPL, however, 2 smaller UU team tournaments happened, UU Blind Draft and UU World Cup. Because I'm known as one of, if not the best PU player, I did manage to get drafted in both of those. Despite the only slightly above average DPP record in UUBD that included 2 losses in the playoffs and a straight up average record in the UU World Cup, my team actually managed to win both of these tournaments. Because of this, and me being a known player because of my other lower tier performances, I was optimistic about my chances of being drafted in UUPL. When it was time for the player auction, however, hours went by as I just wasn't being nominated. With time, I started becoming less and less hopeful about being drafted. I noticed that one of the people who was drafting was a player called PDT. This is someone who I've managed the last 4 PUPLs with, the premier PU tournament that we also won together. I was getting a bit desperate and DM'd him on Showdown to buy me, to which he didn't respond. He kept buying other players, and I also wasn't hopeful for any other managers to buy me at this point. At this point in the auction, teams only had money left for 3 players. No buys. Now, only 2 more players will be bought. Again, it was someone else. To be honest, I had already given up the hope before these last picks and accepted that I wouldn't be bought. PDT put in the last nomination and... after I gave up all hope, I was drafted as the very last player. I've been in a position a lot of times where I was undrafted going into the last nomination of a team tournament and never hasn't actually been me. I decided that I couldn't waste this opportunity. When the auction concluded, a lot of people were talking about my team's roster specifically. Our managers and PDT basically drafted only Uber's players, as those are the people they're most familiar with. Multiple people were mad at this, as they felt that some UU talent got snubbed because of the Uber's players taking up so many roster spots. Our team didn't really care, but it did motivate us to win. Well, I talked about not wasting this opportunity, but if you're the last pick on a team, that means you're last in the pecking order and probably won't see the starting lineup. That was fine with me, however. To be completely honest, I'm not always an amazing teammate, but in this tournament, I really want to help out my team. I posted scouts every week for the whole team, and against my teammates I played test games upon test games upon test games. It was pretty noticeable off the bat that our team didn't have a lot of UU players, as we got destroyed 8-2 in week 1 despite our best efforts. Week 2, our team started getting more familiar with the UU tiers. One of my teammates that did have more experience in his own tier was Highlord, our DPP player. DPP, like I mentioned before, is the gen that I'm most known for when it comes to competitive Pokemon. But with him being one of our most experienced players, I didn't have to help Highlord out as much as some of our other team members. Highlord won his week 2 game and we scraped a 6-4 win this week, a strong showing after that week 1 performance. Week 3, however, we lost again, this time a narrow 6-4 loss. I was very surprised when this originally happened, but for week 4, I was starting DPP. Highlord was our 3rd most expensive player, and our team gave up on him after just 3 games, of which he even won one. Our managers clearly did believe in Highlord from the start though, so if I lost my first game, I would probably be benched again. There was one problem with me playing week 4 of all games though. My opponent that week is a player who played DPP as well in the previous UPL, and he finished with a godlike record. 10 wins and 0 losses. This year he was already defeated, but he was still 2-1, a strong start to the season. In my first game, I would have to face the best player in the tier. I will say that I have beaten LPZ multiple times in the past, but those were in different tiers that I'm actually experienced in. This is a tier in which I've never even built a single team. I was gonna have to give it everything I had to win this one. It was time to get to work, and I invited my friend Beats Black, who I normally prep for DPP tours with. It was only the first day of the week and we already got the testing. But we couldn't figure anything out yet immediately, as we were setting high standards for our prep here. It was back to the drawing board. The main ideas High Lord had for me into LPC Scout were Life or Blaziken and Spikes, so I tried building with those for a while. After creating some teams, it was time for another round of testing. I won more games this time around, but I still wasn't fully satisfied yet. Then I had an idea. Around this Primeape set, I decided to build a team. Following about a billion more test games, I was satisfied with this as my team. It was time for the game. I was very nervous going into this one. The game starts out as I send Primeape into a Histily Sharpedo. Starting off with a fighting type against a dark type is really good. So why am I the one not clicking a button? Well, Sharpedo and Primeape have the same exact speed stat. If he outspeeds, he could click something like Send Headbutt and just straight up kill me. Or Waterfall, which could flinch or get me very low when paired with raw skin damage when I attack. Because of that, I opt to switch to my physically defensive Venusaur. I get crunched on the switch, which drops my defense. Unlucky. I still think the best play here is clicking Sleep Powder. I take a big chunk but I miss. To not sacrifice Venusaur, I switch to Registeel. I predict him to taunt as I go for a Seismic Toss, but he just attacks, leading me to think that he doesn't have taunt, but he just owns me the next turn. At this point I was starting to get very worried. This start was awful. I attack again, but Registeel is getting really low now. Azumarill comes in and Sharpedo finally dies, but it made me reveal 4 Mons and brought 2 of them to basically 30%. Leafeon comes in. With Leaf Sharpedo, I assumed that this will be quite the offensive team and aggressive Leafeon set. I make a safe play to Registeel. Now here, there's 2 possibilities. He either switches or he has a move that kills me, and I know exactly what move that would be. Natural Gift is a one-time use move, of which the typing and base power is based on the berry the user is holding. Leafeon in DPP UU struggles with hitting Registeel and Venusaur, and there's only one type that hits both of those targets super effectively. With the Flash Fire boost, nothing loves switching in on Fire Blast. Feraligatr takes around 40%. I trade my Azumarill for it, and because of the damage, I calculated that it was bulky Feraligatr, meaning my Venusaur outspeeds and kills. He reveals Uxie, which clicks Calm Mind as I go Houndoom. Barf Houndoom doesn't actually beat Calm Mind Uxie outside of getting a crit, so I switch to my own and I scout HP Ground. LPZ sees this as a chance to get a Stealth Rocks up as I get mine up right after it too. Bringing Venusaur in here was to heal it up, as Registeel can only kill it with Explosion, which would be perfectly fine by me, as then Uxie looks very strong. Instead, he goes Toxic Rogue. I try to Sleep Powder it as it clicks Ice Punch, which doesn't even do that much damage, but it does do enough for me to have to Synthesis a few times before Sleep Powdering again. And right before I get the chance, he phrases me. I don't fall and Venusaur dies. At least he has no fire resist to switch in as Houndoom gets a free kill. Fire Blast doesn't one-shot Registeel, so instead I switch to Primeape. Leafeon comes in and it's a speed tie. If I win this speed tie, I'm in a really good position. I probably just win off rip, but I cannot catch a break this game. My Uxie is Psychic Thunderbolt Rest Calm Mind, which is favored to beat his Uxie 1v1, which is Psychic HP Ground Rest Calm Mind. His only attack is resisted and has less PP, and so less chances to crit my Uxie if we go to a setup war. But I don't even get a chance at a setup war if Registeel gets an explosion off when my Uxie isn't full HP, so I have to either click Rest or switch to Houndoom on the turn he clicks Explosion. I finally click Rest and he clicks Explosion. I got the turn right, but I can still lose to a crit. We end up in a long setup war. He crits me, but only when I was full HP, meaning it barely didn't kill me. As he starts running out of Psychics, I crit Thunder and I win the game. I did it! I beat LPZ, which secured my spot for the rest of the tournament, and that despite getting pretty unlucky in the game. My team still lost a week, however. The next week, things were slightly looking up as we tied. I lost my game, which I probably would have won if I healed more with my Venusaur, but when that got me frozen the week prior, I didn't want to be too greedy. It felt bad to lose when it would have won us the week, but I just had to keep it pushing. The next week, I played a game in which both me and my opponent had our share of luck, but I managed to come out on top. My team won the week against the first place team. If we could just win our final week, we could actually make playoffs despite our rough start. My week 7 opponent was a player called Thiago Nunes. He's definitely skilled, but I knew I could beat him if I put the work in. This was a week of trial and error where I pretty much had no clue what I wanted to use. I hadn't really used spikes yet, even though I wanted to in earlier weeks, so that's what I decided to use here. I played pretty late into the week, and when it was time for my game, it already wasn't looking great for our chances. But my game still mattered and we could still make it, we just couldn't lose any more games. The first few turns, nothing special happens. I wish it was Flash Fairy Houndoom, but oh well. I get a big crit on Rhyperior with Dark Pulse. He switches to Blaziken, and because it's already revealed that my Houndoom isn't Flash Fire, he clicks Flare Blitz and does a good chunk. I go to Houndoom to kill the Mismagius, but unfortunately it's Power Gem and Colbur Berry. He doesn't fall for the Sucker Punch and I take a lot of damage while switching to Omastar, which is barely out of Custap Berry range. I bring in Mesprit, which allows me to trap the Mismagius the next turn. He reveals Weezing, which is kind of annoying for my last mon, which is a Sword Stance Venusaur. I go Omastar on Weezing to get up my Stealth Rocks. I force out the Weezing with Mesprit and he reveals Slowking, which is kinda hard to kill, but it's definitely beatable. For a while, neither of us makes good progress, until he sacks Rhyperior and then I sack my Venusaur to his Blaziken, as it wasn't gonna be able to kill Weezing anyway. This also kills his Blaziken to recoil. I kill the Clef with my Mismagius. This isn't a hard game to close out. I just need to taunt the Slowking so it doesn't Thunder Wave or heal up. Then I can win with Ambipom and Mesprit. Instead, I make an aggressive read going for Shadow Ball, but I got the play completely wrong. I try to burn it the next turn and I miss. Mesprit barely lives on as I go for a Healing Wish. Now he does predict my taunt. This means I have to switch to Ambipom. He predicts my fake out correctly as Weezing lives a return afterwards. Now I have to crit Slowking with Mismagius and I don't. I lose the game, not because I got unlucky or got a bad matchup, I just choked badly and now we lost the tournament. We lost it all, and it definitely stung. It wasn't just me who put a lot of time in, it was our whole team. But it was still a fun experience in the end. I managed to overcome the odds and prove that hard work and resilience can beat any record. My UU adventures didn't end here, however. This tournament gave me some good SV UU experience too that I was gonna need in the future. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and clicking the video on screen.